by some chance it's still going at 45, then I'd have to leave the meeting
for a while. I'm hoping that's not going to be.
I think there's zero chance of it going at 4:45.
How about 2:45, which when I have to leave?
No, I think there's pretty slim chance of that too. So we'll play that by ear, but move. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Kesh. Maxine and Kesh. All in favour? Confirmation of the agenda. The agenda is circulated except that the public excluded item relating to the Waikato Regional Airport Limited has been deferred. With that change, Councillor Deputy Mayor Taylor, Councillor Van Oosten, all in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So that brings us on to the confirmation. Oh, sorry, declarations of interest. Are there any today? No. Perfect. No public forum today. Confirmation of the council minutes, February the 4th, as in page 6 of your agenda. Any concerns? There being none, move that that be accepted. As seconded, Councillor Bunting. All in favour? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we move on to the confirmation of elected member briefing notes on page 13. Any moved? Councillor Bunting. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Taylor. All in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Brings us on to the confirmation of the elected member briefing notes on page 16. Item 7. Any questions? Councillor Bunting's moved. Councillor Van Oosten seconds. All in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And brings us up to Chair's report, which is pretty self-explanatory there. And okay. So I'm not going to talk to it. I'm just going to take some questions. Hang on a minute, please, Dave. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, thanks. Referring to your extensive report, Your Worship, the living wage related issues called council minimum wage here, I would like a formal explanation from management as to why, when 6 months' notice, quite literally and quite exactly, was given for this report to come to council, why it hasn't been able to. I appreciate that we haven't got it here and we can't do anything about that, but I think we deserve an explanation since there was such a long lead time.
Look, I'm sorry I can't help with that, but in Richard's absence, but are you happy for us to come back to that later in the meeting?
Yes, I am, but and this is more to the Mayor, I don't feel I can accept a deferral without knowing the explanation. I appreciate that you've been dumped in it, Lance.
Yeah. So I'll talk to Richard and David, and then if we could come back later in the meeting.
I'm happy to defer voting on this item until later. We can do it as a wash-up at the end of the meeting. And by that time, I think Richard hopes to be back here around 10 or 10:15.
You think we'll be finished by then?
Maybe. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, look, I'm just seeking some clarification about what we mean by above the minimum wage level. As I understand it, there's a minimum wage, and then there's a group that call another wage level the living wage. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the living wage or the minimum wage?
We're talking about the minimum wage.
Which is set by central government.
Yeah, which is what Richard was going to, this one is, and the living wage was always incoming to the 30th of April council meeting with a further update or workshop for councillors before. So there are two slightly separate parts, but I think rather than me putting you wrong on anything, we'll just wait till Richard can give you the clearest explanation. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to, in these reports, for it to specify quite clearly which one it is, the minimum wage or the living wage.
Well, my understanding is that we are talking about the minimum wage. I did talk this with Richard through, but and the living wage is a conversation that is coming to a workshop, coming to council. I'm pretty certain of that, but I want to give Richard the chance to explain the difference.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Dave. I'm just trying to get my head around what we mean by above the minimum wage.
So I move that we suspend the debate on this item until the Chief Executive is present, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. So we're not on that item anymore. We're on number 10, which is the deliberations report on the reclassification of Claudelands. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Southgate and councillors. The item in the report is in relation to the proposed reclassification of part of Claudelands Park. This is to allow the extension and redevelopment of the Settlement Centre Waikato, formerly Waikato Migrant Resource Centre. As outlined in the report, the proposed reclassification was open for public consultation in August and September 2019. A total of 41 submissions were received, 38 of which were in favour. The Hearings and Engagement Committee heard submissions on the proposed reclassification on the 5th of February. At this time, the Waikato Show Trust raised that they have an encumbrance on the land and raised objections to the proposed area and its potential impact on their own activities. Since that time, the Show Trust and the Hamilton Multicultural Services Trust have met and agreed on the amended area, which is shown in attachment 1 of the report. Staff believe that the changes to the area are minor. The overall area size is similar. Staff have done a door knocking exercise at houses on Boundary Road opposite the settlement centre, and residents were comfortable with the change, with some minor concerns around the impact on parking, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
I'll just note that I'm happy to move that, just to get it on the board, and seconded Councillor Bunting. Questions, Margaret?
Thank you. Is there any requirement or capacity, any vegetation to be replaced, or not replaced, replanted once building extension, etc. takes place?
So there's no technical requirement, but it is absolutely our intention. There are a couple of trees in the area, and we'll look into whether they can be transplanted into another location. If not, we would intend to put trees back into the park.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to signal now that I'm going to suggest an amendment to the resolution, that to the motion that is encapsulated formally, and that sort of requirement.
Yeah, look, I'm happy, that comes into the resource consent work, but I'm happy for us to, if it's appropriate, to note that appropriate revegetation will occur in the...
Yeah, so if trees are cut down or removed, that they're replaced.
I'm sure Mark would be comfortable with that.
So there will be further opportunity for council to have some influence there when the final planning and designs come back for the redevelopment as well.
Okay.
So this is just a reclassification. It is not giving the settlement centre licence to extend their building. So it's possibly more sensible to wait until we see what their building extension looks like, and at that point we can influence whether trees will disappear. This red line is in fact the reclassification that enables it, but it isn't the plan for the building.
Yeah, so having said that, Councillor Forsyth, maybe we encapsulate it in the minutes. We've made it clear, expectation. You can speak to that in debate as well. Do you want to still continue with the amendment? Because it looks like it might be out of place with this particular one.
Yeah, okay, I'll see what that looks like. I mean, the other thing that I was trying to get to gauge as well with what this particular, what it will look like, was trying to get some scale for the whole park. So once this land designation is replaced and it's no longer a recreational, what sort of impact, what does that look like when you compare it to the rest of the park? I know it's only a small part, but it's kind of like I feel like it's incremental creep.
So, yeah, so when is the opportunity to just make sure that the overall structure of the park and its values are maintained? Or is...
So again, the information would be available during the design of the proposed extension to the building, and we would be able to look at any effects and offsets to those effects at that point in time. Because we can't tell you exactly today what the footprint of the new building will look like. The red line is an indication of if it's reclassified, where the footprint could extend to. But again, until we can actually see what the building proposal looks like. So if you think about the Cote proposal, theirs is a little bit further down the track where you've got draft concept plans
Yes.
of building footprints, and at that point we're able to see what those effects look like, and we can start looking, and also through the resource consent process there may be opportunity.
Yeah, I think you probably understand where I'm coming from, but so if we don't know what the building footprint looks like or the extension looks like, then how are we able to look at the piece of land that we want to be redesignated? So if we don't know how big the building's going to look like, how do we know that the land is going to be big enough or too big?
So we have attempted to, there have been some conversations with the settlement centre around what sort of size building they need, which led us to the first proposal to be reclassified.
Yes.
They are going to slightly, obviously they need to reconfigure, and I'm referring to page 15, where you can see that they did have a building outline there.
Yes.
And that building outline is likely to, if you go to page 33, from our understanding, is to go out to the side and in front a little bit, but they haven't got that yet. So in terms of building size, it's not going to be any bigger than what was originally proposed. It will just be in a different shape.
So square meterage is the same, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
The square metres of the classified area is the same?
Yeah. And the other opportunity, the lease is currently rolling over on a month-by-month basis with the settlement centre. So
Okay.
In order for them to get a building extension, we would need to see the facility development proposal. This is just the piece that enables the settlement centre and makes it possible for them to start securing some funding and start spending money on that other planning.
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at basically a proposed building, although they're not sure, over twice the size of the existing footprint, or double the size of the existing footprint, I should say. Yep.
You still have opportunity to influence what that building looks like. The red line, in terms of the reclassification, says that it can be, that red zone can occupy local purpose community activities as opposed to recreation activities, but it doesn't say that you can't do recreation activities within that red zone.
Right, so it's not going to be fenced?
No.
Okay. It's related but not directly to this. So do we have any sense of what other sorts of proposals where we're going to be reclassifying recreational or open spaces to built up areas, or because my concern is that we're just nibbling away and eroding away at our green spaces, and we know that these times require us to preserve and to grow our green spaces.
Yeah, so the other precedent that's currently under proposal would be the Cote Pacifica, which was, the reclassification was
Yes.
approved on that. Previous cases would be Western Community Centre and the Enderley Community Centre have been reclassified previously as local purpose to enable the community development, the building. I guess remembering that the extension of the building could provide an opportunity for activation of that green space. So we do look at those things from a reserves point of view in terms of the value of the building through the development process.
I'm not sure whether you answered my question. You have referred to stuff that we have done, but I'm asking, do we know of anything that's coming up?
So nothing coming up other than this one and the Cote that's been previously just approved.
Okay, I think it's important to have that context.
Yeah, and I think what the history shows is that they're generally few and far between, and we're also we'll be working through with council over the next few months before the LTP just around where we're going with community facilities and
Okay, so I think
what's our role.
we're going a little out of scope here, so I do hear the intent, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
The intent to protect the amount of green space that we have in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
Is-
it's helping
is-
make my decision, because I know we've set some precedent, but as we're removing green space, I want to understand, well, where are we bringing it back, or where are we keeping that balance? Thank you.
Fair enough, that's. Councillor McPherson?
Coming from somewhat similar standpoint of Margaret's, I was quite interested to see you had picked up similar issue. My question to staff is also about the look and feel of the whole area. When we give someone a lease like this, so I'm trying to focus on the actual question in front of us, do we talk about the look and feel, the fact that it's in a park and it's got to look as part of the park, or because it seems that we're focusing mainly on building footprints and perhaps building designs later on, but as Margaret has asked questions about, there's more to this place than just that, or there should be, in her opinion and in mine.
So absolutely yes is the answer to your question. So there is a facility development proposal process that's linked to our community occupancy, and the integration with the surrounding park area is key in that process. I think at the moment what I would say is that you've got an old rugby club rooms, which is not a fabulously designed building, and the intent in talking with Ali and her team is that they do end up with a building so that their community groups can actually use more of the outdoor space, and it interacts much better with the green space.
So yeah, following that, because I was just going to bring up the rugby club hangover there. The rugby club hangover is not just on the building, but it's also in the space. It had no trees because it was hard having trees in the middle of your rugby field.
So just keep to the question.
Yeah, so
yeah.
what is going to happen? Are we going to get something somewhere in council that talks about re-greening of that part of Claudelands, I guess,
Yeah.
including the
Look,
footprint area?
I hear that. It's a little bit off scope from the decision today, which is just around that.
Well, I'm asking about the process, not to decide it here.
Yeah.
So you'll get the whole proposal coming back. So all those matters you're talking about, council has quite a bit of control over those, working with the group around how does it fit in with their open space plan, with the management plan for the park, and also the look and feel of the building and that sort of thing. So basically Maria's team will work with Ali and her team, and then if it's something which is, completely unacceptable, taking those things into account, then obviously we wouldn't put it in front of council, and we'd work with that group to get something which is more acceptable and in tune with those policies and also your decision making.
And will the same thing go for the public transport component that is not built into this area, but we did touch on last time this came up? It's a car-oriented place, and we're teaching people when they first come to Hamilton, you need a car.
Yeah, so Councillor McPherson and I had a conversation about whether we could identify this as a key site on the bus route, and Ali and I have also had that conversation, and she is very keen for those alternative transport methods to be explored during the development.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm just where the conversation's going. Isn't the reclassification being done almost solely so that it will allow the trust to put a building on the land that they probably currently use but don't lease from us?
So it does two things. It enables us to grant a lease to them for their existing space.
Yep.
And by extending the footprint out to the red zone that we're suggesting, it does enable some future development of that building footprint, yes.
So when they come back with their resource consent, that will come back to council, will it, for consideration?
Yep.
Yep, okay. How do you think you'll address the parking issue that that the local residents have raised in terms of getting this particular part of the process over the line? given the earlier questions around the fact that it is a destination generally by car at the moment. And I know that there's yellow lines outside outside on the road. So if the centre is increased in size, you'll need additional parking.
Potentially, my understanding is that the current car park is beyond the size that may be required. That detail would be worked through in the resource consent, remembering that we have a secondary car park on Claudelands Park by the playground, and that there is off-street parking and a path network on the other side, on the Heaphy Terrace side.
That's through Brooklyn Road, is it? You have to access that through Brooklyn Road?
From Heaphy Terrace.
Heaphy Terrace,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, okay.
So the resource consent process will determine, based on the building.
What the traffic management plan comes up with
Yeah.
in terms of parking spaces, okay? Because there will be some space on the other side of the building, won't there, where?
Yeah.
Yeah. So currently, do we own the buildings that are there and all of the improvements?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So when we get a chance to look at the resource consent, we'll see how the new building might dovetail into the existing buildings that we own. We won't be funding the new building?
No.
No. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bunting.
I just want to delve into the consultation with the people over the road. Lance, you mentioned, or was it Marie, you mentioned we'd talked to the residents in the houses over the road or done some door knocking. Did we talk to, were they the owners of the properties or were they tenants? Or I guess what I'm worried about is this going to blow back on us at a later date?
They were the residents, yes. So we were able to get a list of who the owners were and go and talk to the ones that were owners there. We made every practical ability to get in touch with all owners that were in that area. We weren't able to reach every single one of them, but we feel we've done the best job we possibly could to contact all the owners.
Okay, are you confident this isn't, so when we get an application to extend the building, are you confident we're not going to get any blowback then?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
When we look at extending the building, all going well, are you confident we're not going to get any pushback then?
Yes, I think there will be further opportunities for those residents to be a part of that process as it goes along as well.
I would also add that the settlement centre and their intention in around building a community centre is to wrap the whole community into what their plans are. So irrespective of what is required from resource consents, whether they're notified or non-notified, the settlement centre do fully intend to work and have been working with their neighbours, with the Show Trust, because they are inherently a community centre, so they kind of get that importance.
Okay. No, I just want to mitigate any risks that may be coming up. So if I'm right, because of the abundance of horse shows and the likes that are encroaching on that could clash with we're looking at going along the road as opposed to into the park with any extension, yeah?
So this is the compromise that was reached in agreement with the settlement centre, the council staff and the Show Trust. So the Show Trust are on board with this proposal.
Okay, cool. So that's the last we should hear that. And when I was talking with the settlement centre, they were talking about bike parky type sort of things and really recreational stuff in that area. That isn't going to be a building where those two trees are on item 10. Can you elaborate on any of that? Or?
So again, that detail will come through the facility development, but knowing the trust and the work that they do, they run a number of bike programs and any opportunity where parks can work with them to enhance that experience would be taken.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thanks.
Councillor Gallagher.
Obviously, we're crystal clear. All we're doing today is amending a classification and expanding the community facilities footprint slightly. The issue of the design of the building, the layout of the building will go through due process, of which even the neighbours will have some input because that'll be another application. Do I understand?
So you're not making a decision today to
No.
expand the footprint. You are making a decision to reclassify the land to make that expansion possible.
Reclassify, right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. I thought I'd be cheeky and ask her one more question. I'm just following up on the line of questioning from Councillor McPherson, just around a public transport opportunity and a public route. And I note that the footprint of the car park is actually quite big. It's huge. Has there been consideration to, a couple of questions on that, build on the car park area rather than encroach onto the green space? And aligned with that a little bit as well, is there an opportunity to use some of that car park space as a potential bus stop area? Have we looked at those options?
So those are the things that we would particularly...
Sorry, could you speak up a wee bit?
Sorry. Particularly the bus... particularly looking at the bus access, again, in my meeting with Councillor McPherson, he has asked me to explore the possibility of putting a bus in and out and stop within that car park space, and we can do that through the facility development planning.
Great, okay, then so looking further down that path then, is it still a requirement? Do we still need to be encroaching on the green space? As we can all see, that car park is huge compared to the existing building. And I think one of you also said that there's an over sort of allocation of car parks in that particular space. So has consideration been given to building onto that car park area rather than onto the park?
We can look at that, yes. It hasn't currently, and I guess that's the point that I make, that in terms of reclassifying that red line, it doesn't necessarily mean that the building is going to occupy that whole red space.
Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't help.
I think we have pursued this as far as we can go on that line of questioning.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Van Oosten.
No, thank you. I notice on the amended, well, actually on both of those proposals, that the car park doesn't fall within the red line. I wonder if you could give me some understanding about what that is and how that car park therefore is assigned.
So that the car park would remain in the recreation zoning, and it's permitted under the Reserves Act to have a car park to support. So back in the day when it was a rugby club, and it's not unusual around our city to have car parks on recreation zone land for the purposes of enabling the activation of that recreation zone land. So it's not unusual.
All right, so it wouldn't therefore be simply for the use of the centre,
No.
but could be for other users of the park.
Absolutely. So it's not currently in the leased area, and it's not intended that it would be in the leased area. You're quite right. It can be used by the, but it can also be used by and is used by park users to walk their dogs or, yeah.
Okay. And so therefore, following Margaret's line of questioning, the extension of the building in the future wouldn't be able to go over that red line into the car park?
Not without the reclassification. And I guess when we looked at it and taking into account the request to look at a bus moving through that space, I would suggest you could have one or the other, not both. So if you were going to have a bus in that car park to get people to the site, you couldn't have the building in that space either. It would just make things too tight.
Right. And that would then require an additional change to the classification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for those questions. We're moving into debate. It's been moved and it's been seconded. As the mover, I'll just kick off to say I hear what my colleagues are saying about the need to protect and preserve green space across the city, 100% behind that, looking at that big picture and how we do the very best in our green spaces. Having said that, I support this in the same way that I supported Cote Pacifica getting a reclassification on that piece of land, because there's a bigger picture here. The work that the settlement centre do is phenomenal. We've got 160 different ethnic groups in Hamilton, growing all of the time, with more people choosing Hamilton as their home. They do need support as they settle in our city. And the Settlement Centre provides a whole range of amazing programs and services, but they're pushed at the seams of that building at the moment. They're just popping out of the place. There's so much need. And this will be a facility that the whole community can use. In fact, I've used their facility for a small-scale event myself, so it is open to the public. They willingly share with the wider community their rooms and spaces when they're not in use during the day, and that's something that other people can enjoy. And I know that part of the reason that the Waikato show withdrew their objection was because they understood that they too will be able to use the facilities of the Settlement Centre during events that they're holding on the reserve land. So this will, and I've been to a number of events at that building, and I have to say they already spill out onto the exact footprint marked out by the red line on the grass with gazebos and tents and, temporary structures to accommodate people. I would love to see that centre have a better inside and outside, indoor-outdoor flow for the events that they hold, better speakers to serve those events and things like that, which are pretty standard these days. There is so much going on there all of the time, and all of it's good, and I can't speak highly enough of the work that they do. So it's my great pleasure to move this little bit of land so we can enable them to move to the next level with their activities. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, and I'm fully in support of your words, Mayor Paula, and I'd like to acknowledge Ali in the gallery sitting there all by herself, miles away from anyone, and the work that they do in that centre. Just speaking to a couple of things raised earlier on, just with regards to that car park, there may be plenty of places to park cars at the moment, but the nature of that car park is a little bit different in that they have Learn to Drive based from there. They also have Learn to Ride Your Bike based from there, so they use that car park for a little bit more than just parking cars for meetings. So I'd be a little bit cautious about encroaching onto that space, which is already well used for some of the nature of some of their activities. The question we've got to ask ourselves, and it's widely acknowledged that they do a great job with 160 different nationalities and cultures in this country at least, in this town at least, if not they're where. If not they're where, we don't have a better space, and look, it's just a fact of life that this thing does need to expand a bit. But I think with these guys, with this team, there's nothing to fear, because we won't get a better tenant who is likely to retain the green space and keep the nature of the place, and from the questioning there before, and consult with the community better than the Multi-Services or Multicultural Services Trust. They are great tenants. I'm really excited in conversations to hear what they intend to do with the rest of that footprint, with paths merging out into the park and doing some exciting things. All we're doing is giving them a little bit of room to breathe. I would rather it went into the park myself rather than along the road, because still, no matter how good a building is, it still does block the park from the road, acknowledging Councillor Forsyth's green space drive there. But if this is as good as we can get, then I'm right behind it. So I look forward to the next stage, and I hope this gets through.
Thanks. I too support the enlarged leased area for the resettlement centre, but firstly I'm mindful of what Councillor Bunting's just told us, that warning the sort of public not to encroach too much into the parking area. He's perhaps given an argument for that needing to be leased to the resettlement centre, the car park as well, if they're using it for that. So that's something that maybe it's been overlooked. If the public can't fully use it, then is it right that it's not part of the leased area. That's a question that his speech has suddenly raised. But I think the questions we've had before and the issues in front of us show the problems we have when we only get little bits of the issue coming in front of us. The little bit is this particular footprint for the resettlement centre, when most of us are actually trying to also think about the overall look and feel of the whole area. And this is one of the problems with not just the RMA, but also the Reserves Act, or whatever act it is that governs this, that we can't look at the bigger picture easily in these sorts of debates, and we should be able to. This was a rugby field and a rugby club rooms, which got offered as a sort of potentially a short fill-in measure to the Resettlement Society, the Multicultural Services Trust. Initially, we didn't know how long it would last. I think it's better when we do that sort of thing that we have a bigger picture plan. What is the plan for changing it from a rugby park, a rugby playing field, set of rugby playing fields and a car park and building associated with that, to something that's genuinely for the community? I haven't actually seen that. I think we need to redo the management plan, at least for that side of the park. We've got the bush nearby, where I remember that was restricted and the area could grow because of the activities that were sort of there based on the old rugby sort of activities. And I think we need to have a relook at the whole area. We can't do that as part of this particular resolution, but I think we have to do that sort of thing when we're retrofitting these facilities into council reserves, and we're going to have quite a bit more of that coming over the next few years as the old style sports clubs go out of existence and other community facilities change use.
Yes, I fully support the motion by the Mayor and Chair of the Committee. I would say that if we're looking at three potentially iconic type community activities in terms of building, bricks and mortar and governance, we've got the long-standing Western Community Centre, which is a role model for the neighbourhood type of community centre. We're obviously going to get the Whānau and the Kura Pacifica Centre, and this just is another part of the Waikato Settlement Centre incredible journey. I do find it a bit ironic, and I don't mean any disrespect, where we are talking about green space. Let me say two things. Number one, take your hats off to Mayor Margaret Evans, because I remember when all that was all fenced off. There was no green space and no public access, and that took a visionary council, which I hope this one will still be, which I'm sure it is, Mayor Margaret Evans, and even before he came on, and a visionary council, all right, opened those fences, and with a agreement with our show trust, created a Claudelands Park. Isn't it wonderful? We can now talk about a management plan for Claudelands Park. Now, I also, without being unduly disrespectful, if you want to reinstate or make up a deficit of some green space, you have the V8 Memorial Car Park. You can do it now. You can create green space there. There's tons of ways in which you can preserve green space. But all we're doing here is we're just changing its classification. Obviously, the actual footprint, the design will come back. And as part of the review of the whole Claudelands management, I want to say, where the winter show stands are, there's a whole chunk that is green and has got this big fence, which prevents good public access. And I want we even had this conversation under Mayor Julie Hardacre's day. How do we actually perhaps look at a better public access to that area during the day, observing some security issues in terms of the building? So it seems irony that we are spending a lot of time debating this little footprint, and yet we're absolutely silent on a huge chunk, go figure, which is often closed off. And I think, so I can't wait for a broader review. And I think this is definitely taking us in a very, very good direction. And finally, hats off to the HMS Trust and the staff and the team, Ali and the team down there, who have done so much to, if you like, contribute with all of our new settlers to the wonderful richness of this place.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten.
Thanks very much, and acknowledge Ali in the room. Kia ora to you, and thanks, Mayor Paula, for your opening comments on that, and also to my colleagues as well. Green space is important to me too, but like the rest of Hamilton, the Migrant Centre is growing, and in my mind we need to be able to enable that growth to happen and the development in our community in order that they can do their great work to support new Hamiltonians and help them to assimilate into our communities. I applaud your efforts in the consensus that you've come to with the Show Trust and working together to find that compromise. I see that as a real model to others on how to work collaboratively, and that gives me really great comfort in how you'll work on the development of that area into the future, and I would expect that that will include the consultation with your neighbours as well, and I look forward to seeing those further plans coming into council so that we can consider and look to support your continued growth, and applaud your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth.
I have no doubt about the value of our ethnic settling centre and the people that work there and the people that are settled in that into the city and through that gateway as well. But I'm pleased that I've had the opportunity to wear my environment hat and just signal that really this is the way that we will be viewing how we approach and how we make decisions around all manner of workings in the city, and that the effects on our green space, the effects on our environment will be overarching, and they'll reach into every part of the organisation and, as I said, every decision we make. So I'm looking forward to those sorts of directions and guidelines and principles coming from the Environment Committee, and as I said, it's been a really good opportunity just to narrow our focus just a little, and to pique our interest and our way of viewing and decision making. So I will be supportive of this, but when it comes down to the detail and what this plan actually looks like, I'll be in their boots and all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Some good comments made. Just a reply. I also will be looking to ensure that this development is as environmentally sensitive as it possibly can be. Just in comment around some of the comments about the car park access, the public has lots of access to that car park, lots of time. On the weekend they have it exclusively. During the week you do see people both at the beginning and the end of the day coming with their dogs to walk their dogs through the park. And certainly when there are many public events such as the fantastic Nesian Festival that goes there, that car park is used for the general public. I do visit and pop in from time to time to this centre. I've very rarely been able to get a parking space as a member of the public there. But I do also believe that having connection to transport, passenger transport, would be very helpful. They do a fantastic program around cycling for new migrants too, who get a bike, a second-hand bike all done up and fixed, and they're taught to ride the bike, because we have to remember a lot of new migrants don't initially have a driver's licence either. So it's a good opportunity to improve some of those connections, the cycling connection, and potentially passenger transport, buses. I do like that idea, because that will give people another access point to that wonderful centre. Look, just at the end of the day, the parting thought is that I believe that parks are very special places, but they're there to be used and enhanced. And I don't think this activity detracts from the values of the park. I think it enhances it. So we'll go to the vote. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so you've heard the feedback, Ellie, so that's cool. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to item 11, which is the REAP change, and I do have a mover and a seconder who have asked to. Deputy Mayor Taylor's going to move, and Councillor Hamilton would like to second.
What are they moving? This
Option 2.
Option 2.
So it's 4A and B and option 2, C and D.
Have you got that? That's not at all complicated. All good? Okay, now we'll hear from staff the summary important points and go to questions.
Thank you, Mayor Southgate. First thing I'd like to note is that there is just a couple of corrections that I wanted to add to the report, which I've sent through to Amy to put up on the screen. So at paragraph 43, and apologies for this, there was just one other additional provision that needed to be addressed, which then is reflected in the proposed amended resolution 4B. So just by way of background, I'll take the report as read, but this report comes off the back of a briefing I gave to elected members a couple of weeks ago about proposed plan change 6, which is a plan change, a simple plan change to deal with the regulatory efficiency and effectiveness program. In that briefing, I covered the extent of that plan change, the overwhelming majority of which are what I'd call largely administrative tidy-ups that enhance the efficiency of the administration of the plan and save time and money, not just for staff, but also for applicants because they remove provisions which are redundant and which don't help achieve the objectives of the plan. Notwithstanding that, there were a couple of provisions in there that I highlighted to elected members that may result in additional infill development, and given recent concerns and interests of this council around infill, the steer that I got at that briefing was that there'd be a preference for a much more holistic view around infill. So we're keeping the settings that we've got, and this would look, that recommendation then would look to remove some specific provisions of REAP that would potentially enhance infill options. The other part of the recommendation, and there are just two options, we don't make a recommendation in there, is about the way in which this plan change could be heard and how decisions would be made. So the previous council last year, when they made a decision to notify this plan change, also resolved that council in its entirety would hear the plan change and make decisions on it. There was some discussion around that at the briefing a couple of weeks ago, and the options in here merely reflect the tone and tenor of those discussions and present an alternative, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm happy to take any questions. I've also got Mr Muldowney here to deal with any of the legalities associated with the recommendations.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any questions? We did have a fairly fulsome, as you say, workshop on that, and you have had a chance to go through the details. So no, that's good. Therefore, we will go straight into the debate. Deputy Mayor Taylor as the mover.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Southgate. As I stated before, I'm speaking in support of the recommendations 4A, B and options 2, C and D. I totally support these recommendations, which I think very succinctly distill the discussions that we had in the briefing a week or so back. I absolutely support putting the REAP plan change 11 on the back burner. As we've talked about just yesterday in a briefing, we need to rethink the direction that has previously been taken in terms of some of the infill going on in the city. I think my view is people want greater control of such development. Some say for those directly affected, and a more strategic approach to where high density development occurs. Yes, we need more housing. Yes, we need more affordable housing. Yes, we need infill and plenty of it, but not everywhere, and not without some more effective consultation mechanisms and quality safeguards. So let's get our whole thinking on infill and density straight before we make any more decisions. Related to that, I think it's appropriate at this stage to also remove the elements of Plan Change 6 which relate to density, which Luke has touched on. So again, let's get our thinking straight before we give any more concessions away in that area. On the issue of whether we send the Plan Change 6 off to commissioners to decide or try to decide as a full council, I'm very clear. If we take out the two references to density issues, which the staff recommendation suggests, the vast majority of changes in Plan Change 6 are about making the whole process more straightforward and allowing straightforward development to be done easier, removing needless barriers that waste time and cost money. These are not items we need to be, as a council, applying our minds to, in my view. We've set the strategy and the policy. Let's let our commissioners get on with the job of refining the detail. One look at any of our diaries in coming months should be enough to convince us it's sparing a full week of hearings, and the reading that goes with that is a bit silly and just not practical at all, in my view. Not only is that a poor use of our time, it takes away our ability to work in more significant areas of policy, and there's plenty going on in this council. We're here for governance, not painstakingly sifting our way through the nitty-gritty of a whole lot of technical data. So I support these recommendations and urge my colleagues to also do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
While I support Councillor Jeff's comments about withdrawing Plan Change 6 and the density issues at the moment, and think that's the wise thing to do, and I think we probably all felt that the other day, I don't support him in principle on having commissioners hearing. I think he was mixing up two things there. He was talking about the need for streamlined decision making on resource consent matters, which I certainly agree with in principle, but this issue is who approves or who deliberates on the actual plan change. That's what's in front of us at the moment, and I think it is absolutely elected members' role to deliberate on plan changes, because that is the policy which then governs the decisions on specific applications. Now, I'm not too fussed which way the vote goes, but I'm not going to vote for option 2, saying a commissioner who hasn't sat in the debates around here, who has been trained at the university, at various universities in RMA procedures, but not in real life. I'm not about to say that it's a good idea to give away decision-making rights on policy to those people. We need to make the policy as councillors. That's our responsibility, and yes, diaries are difficult at the moment, though that may change a little bit, and if we could do electronic meetings it might actually be easier for us to do it, but that's another question. I think it's a bit of a slippery slope to say commissioners should discuss this because it's only administrative. Firstly, I think staff have been scaring us off from wanting to go into this area, because the week that Jeff refers to actually referred to when the whole lot was in front of us, not necessarily for just the administrative changes that would be left once you remove Plan 6. So that's one thing. That's a scare tactic, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I've seen it over several years being pushed like that. I've had discussions with Luke and others about that sort of issue as well. I think we are being pushed away from making decisions in this area, and it's very convenient to say you haven't got the time to do it anyway, so why not give it to a commissioner? I don't buy that, I'm sorry. What I'm particularly worried about, though, is at the end of the day, we've abrogated our responsibility, given away our right for decision making to a set of unelected people who don't have any requirement to follow the mood and feeling of the elected members in this room who are representing the community. And it's hit and miss whether they end up on the same page. And I've seen plenty of cases where commissioners have not ended up with the result that this council would have ended up because of the way the RMA works. And I don't want us to end up in that even worse situation than we're already in that respect.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, look, I'd really agree. I think Deputy Mayor Jeff summed it up really well. I don't entirely agree with Councillor Dave's view that we're abdicating our responsibility. The fact that a commissioner is reviewing this in a robust environment is doing so because we've enabled them to do it. We've put these plan changes up, we've tested them with the market, and we're saying, now as an independent technical expert, we're submitting this to you for advice without political bias, and they're trained to be neutral and professional.
Point of order. My point of order is that the submission to commissioners is not for advice. They have delegated authority. Point of order is a factually wrong statement, that it's not for advice, it's for decision, and the two different things.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll rephrase that. We're submitting this for the Commissioner's decision, so that by the very fact that they're deciding over it, we've already gone through quite a thorough process to bring it to them, and I think that's an appropriate outcome. And we've seen an appropriate outcome, well, I think in favour of Council with Te Awa Lakes recently, whereby it went through a very robust process. In fact, Council had to ensure that the submitter had a very robust, detailed analysis, and I think that's a case in point of how we can get a good outcome for our city.
Thank you everyone. I'll just say a couple of things. Well, one thing actually, I support the Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councillor Hamilton in respect of the comments, and I agree wholeheartedly that at the moment the other things that were on the agenda need to hold back pending the conversations that we're having about the nature of development that we require in the city. But these are practical common sense changes which hopefully will make it easier for our business community to get on and do what they need to do, especially in this time. So I support that. In relation to the commissioners, I didn't mention it before in the questions and possibly I should have. I have done in another agenda item, removed the brackets around commissioners and put expected commissioners. I know sometimes you have a commissioner, but I'll speak to the fact that in things like this, having some cross-fertilisation of ideas brings something to the table, I believe. So my expectation would be to have a minimum of 2, but 2's good. 2 people coming from different skill sets and different backgrounds able to look at it together. And I think that brings a little bit more robustness to the process than putting it in the hands of one person to intellectualise and decide upon the whole issues. So if I had thought about it sooner, I would have done what I did with another recommendation that's coming up for commissioners, is to have taken off the brackets in the D there, but not going to worry too much about that, just flag my content and my intent.
In terms of the points that Councillor McPherson has raised, Commissioner versus the Council hearing, can you just take the votes relative in part so that the two can be separated out?
More than happy to.
Thank you.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Just a brief right of reply, if I may.
Yep.
Mayor Southgate. I respect Councillor Dave's view, but I just don't agree that we are not abrogating any responsibilities here. This is governance. We have set policy on this. We spent 2 or 3 hours yesterday picking apart our views on density and infill. We are dealing with that. We've taken the density, the Plan Change 11 off the table for now, and we've taken the elements that touch on density and infill out of this. So that is governance. We are dealing with those issues. These other ones are just a whole raft of little things. Do not need us cooped up in a room for a week to deal with those. They are little stuff. There's a time to be in the kitchen and there's a time to be out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've that was just the point of order from Councillor Gallagher, because we've finished with right of reply, so we're into voting. We'll go to the vote, please. Oh, you wanted to take it in part. Apologies. Let reset. That's my mistake. So we're going to do A, B, and C together.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to the vote on the top A, B, and C, but not D with the commissioners. Go to the vote, please.
On which, on just ABC?
A, B, C.
I think it should just.
A and B it should be,
Just be A and B?
and then C and D would be taken separately.
Okay, thank you. All right, apologies again, reset. It's hard looking behind and looking forward at the same time.
Oh, good.
Okay, A and B. Everybody happy? And go to the vote, thank you.
The motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you. And now we'll go to C and D. To the vote, please. C and D. This is relating to the commissioners.
Do we still?
What's happened? A one voter? Uh-huh.
Yeah, doubled Gary's normal vote.
The motion is passed, 8 for, 2 against.
No, 2 votes.
Councillors, we're going to take a 10-minute stretch now for comfort, etc.
Gary, +1.
Yeah, Gary.
I didn't even have to send them a text this time.
No. But anyway,
Amy, isn't it?
There's how does that bird song, there's a time to...
That just popped into my head.
Updation though is a whole nother thing.
It hasn't got it. Mine's gone crazy.
I was going to mention your
is we will go back to my report since Richard's here, and I've just given him the basic outline of your questions around the minimum wage and the living wage and where we're at with both issues and what this report is saying.
Okay, so I can't get into diligence. Sorry, guys, I'll have to ad-lib. We are due to bring back a report in respect of the impact of moving all of our contractors to council's minimum wage. So it wasn't the living wage, it was council's minimum wage at the time, which was $20 as it was set. The team went away and initially did an assessment that there was 300 contractors that we needed to do some work on, and that at the time was identified as being quite a massive piece of work. And as a consequence, they've been working through it in probably not necessarily the most effective way. What we've done now is we're triaged, and we're only applying to those ones that are reasonable to assume have a minimum wage challenge, or less than our minimum wage challenge. So it's basically been a workload issue that's caused the delay. I'm not happy about it. It's something that I wanted to get done and dusted and bring back to the annual plan for discussion. Having said that, there's nothing stopping us coming up with a strategy outside the annual plan and pushing it forward, so it's not ideal. The second part, I'm not sure what the question is in terms of where we are from a council perspective. So from a council perspective, I still intend to bring forward at the next council meeting, the April one, the recommendation to align our minimum wage with the living wage. There's some debate, and we ought to have that with the elected members, whether or not we set it every year against the living wage and give the councillors the discretion to do so, or we just make a decision and a policy position to adopt the living wage. Well, a recommendation to do that, so I need to work through that aspect as well. So that's an April discussion to have on that front. I don't know if that answers the questions.
Well, it was relating to my reports, wasn't
Yep.
it? But Dave can re-articulate his question now that you're here.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I think that covers what's going to happen. I would say that as the mover of the motion causing us to come back, or asking for this to come back at this meeting, or by the end of March, or whatever the wording was,
This is leading to a question, right?
yeah. Would you agree that it's very disappointing that staff didn't come and see the mover of the motion if they were confused about what should happen?
I think they should have come and spoken to you about the scope of what they were trying to achieve to make sure they satisfied that. I did notify you, Councillor Dave, that we're putting this recommendation forward, that we weren't going to meet the requirements. I also indicated that I wasn't necessarily as happy that we were doing so either, because it's something that I personally believe in that we should get sorted out. But I do agree with your sentiment, yes. Short answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, positive.
Wasn't it correct that when we had the debate in September last year about the security guard contract, which led to this motion, and an earlier one a couple of months earlier where we talked about the cleaners contract, that staff identified that there were only a handful of contractors that we used, I think 6 or 8 sticks in my mind, that were in this ballpark that we were looking at?
I think they had a gut feel of 6 or 8, and I think, to be honest, my gut feel today is still that, yes.
So wouldn't it have, why didn't they, can you explain why they didn't look at those 6 or 8, and then maybe there might have been the odd 1 or 2 person that would have got the lion's share, if not everyone?
I can't explain why they didn't, apart from the workload at the time. I don't know if that's a reasonable enough excuse. They should have notified you sooner and maybe had that conversation sooner, but unfortunately they haven't done the work, so we can't bring it back today.
Okay, well I guess it's a bit like flogging a dead horse now.
Well, I'm a fresh horse, Councillor.
So let's
I just showed up.
Let's just keep with the question. Keep with the questions, because the debate comes shortly. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, my question is, in terms of this research that's being done, does the requirement to pay the council's minimum wage apply to those employees in those contractor firms who are doing work for council, or is it across the whole of the organisation that operates as a contractor from time to time for council?
So it's the specific inquiry we're following is those employees engaged in work for council. The part of the question we have, and we ask the security contract and the cleaning contract, is can your systems manage that? And in both cases, they already do that. They have different wage structures for different clients as well. So what we found to date is there is a practical solution should we wish to move them to a certain price point for our contracts, and wage point for our contracts, they can achieve that.
So that is the question that's being asked by
absolutely.
Staff of those contractor firms?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have that we received the report. I'll move, and once my report, so I'll just move it. If we've got a second, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Sorry, there's another question I'd like to ask, just in relation.
Yep.
Yeah, my apologies. Where it says defers the report to the 30th of April, I'm sort of happy with that, but I'm wondering whether we can get the information well ahead of that, so we're not waiting another 5 weeks to get that. Is there, in 3 weeks, can we have it so we've got time to mull over it, discuss it?
So slightly outside of this, but we can roll it into this, is we are planning to bring back more information on the living wage further on from the previous briefings we've had. So I've been asked to bring forward some more information. So as part of that, which will be before the 5 week mark, I'll include the information on the contractor stuff as well, Councillor Dave, so we can get it to you guys earlier before the decision is made so you can understand what it looks like.
Makes sense to have it as a comprehensive package at this time. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So, Chair, are there 2 work streams involved here? One is the council's minimum wage with contractors, and the second work stream is around the living wage. So I think this whole discussion is confusing around what we mean by minimum wage and living wage. And, and above the minimum, we also talk in the motion about it being above the minimum wage.
So I have been, so the piece of work that was requested at the time was to increase our contractors to the Hamilton City Council minimum wage. At that time was $20 an hour. That's the piece of work that's underway. However, some members of this council have also asked, and it's come through in a briefing, that we consider moving our minimum wage for council employees up to the living wage. So as part of this work, we'll broaden the umbrella of the engagement out in terms of the original resolution to consider what that value proposition looks like as well. So I'll clearly distinguish so it's not confusing. The first step move to our minimum wage, and then what is the impact on staff costs and contractor costs if we were to move our minimum wage to a living wage or similar number. So when the information comes back, it'll be very clearly segregated so you can understand the steps and what's involved and what's not. But at the moment, this original resolution was about moving to the $20 an hour. But given the conversation that's had since then, I need to be a bit more broader in my response when I come back to council.
Are we likely in the context of, and I won't call it a briefing, but in the context of receiving information, are we likely to hear from groups and organisations who have a contrary view to the living wage? Because the only briefing we've had was in fact a briefing which included only presenters who were only in support of the living wage.
So I've been asked as part of following that briefing to provide a more balanced, I won't say balanced, provide other independent views of living wage Aotearoa, and I'm not saying their views are incorrect or not, but I've been asked to provide other intel. So I'm currently working with lecturers from the University of Waikato to look at bringing in broader information to provide a greater context. So that's where I'm currently working on at the moment. So that's currently underway, and hopefully we can bring that forward.
And that came out of, for example, Councillor Forsyth's questioning in that workshop about other information, and we took that on board. You done, Rob?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wondered if you were making any inroads with Treasury, who actually set the minimum wage, or advise government on the level of the minimum wage, because to me there's obviously a variation there which would be interesting for us to get what Treasury thinks might be the difference between the two.
Yep, and there's a lot of, so to make this really short, when we come back for the briefing, I'll bring that information back to you. That's probably the best way.
Councillor Hamilton, this is just a question at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Were you aware that at that briefing, I think you left the room, there was also a desire to have not just economic figures, but relativity considerations and social impacts and a wider holistic view of, inputs here and outputs there?
Yep, I was aware of that. I was a bit flippant with just saying economic. There's broader impacts that was requested of me. And that's the broader impacts have been requested of the contact of the university as well.
Thank you.
So that question has just given me rise to, will there be any information about the social impacts of the living wage as it applies to perhaps some of the families that may be involved in receiving such a figure?
Yeah, I think there's, yes, it will. I'm not going to debate it now. I mean, there's ample information all over the place on this we can pull together for you, councillors.
Thank you,
Thank you.
councillors. We take from this is what came in a workshop, as Ryan and Dave and Margaret have said, is that there was a call for bringing together all the information that we require to make that balanced decision. So we've captured that, and we now know what the process is like in terms of time. So we'll go to the debate. I'm moving the report. Deputy Mayor Taylor has seconded it, and we're in debate. I don't see anyone yet. No? No debate? Oh, yes, Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, look, I only want to add a short thing, and that's about the process of this. It is not that uncommon for us to strike time process hurdles in matters like this, and we can't get you the information when we said we thought we could, etc. But I think there's an obligation to go back to the sponsors of motions and that in council to have a discussion with them, so it's quite clear, and they don't hear on the grapevine or through other parties that things have been delayed. So my plea is to the senior leadership team to monitor that a bit better. We can accept things not happening the time frame we anticipated, provided we're given heads up.
I think what the mover is one thing. Council needs to have that oversight.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's only a successful motion when it's been adopted by the majority. So, Councillor Van Oosten.
Wanted to support Dave in the comment around process. It's really important that we have an understanding about, where motions are coming from and where proposals are getting us to a map forward is useful. However, I think in this instance, we are using language that creates confusion, and that's a real problem in understanding what exactly is being talked about and proposed. And I look forward to April, where we can have an opportunity to explore the whole of what's being proposed, and the opportunity to really reflect a public desire to see council working in a way that supports a real social obligation that we have, and especially in times that we're in currently, and an opportunity to show real leadership around that. So, kia ora, I look forward to that April discussion.
Councillor Gallagher.
I endorse all the words of the previous speaker. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Thank you, councillors. We'll go to the vote.
I took time to add on for his next speech.
Are we waiting on anyone?
Deputy Mayor Taylor. The motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you, councillors. We're now going to item 12, which is Hamilton City Council's draft submission to Well Energy Trust annual plan. And just leading this in, thank you very much to those councillors. There were a number of you that involved in a thread of feedback on the submission, and I appreciate that.
Good morning, Mayor, councillors. I'd just like to just confirm for the councillors that draft 2 was uploaded to Diligent. It's not the version that it's the version you can see in Diligent. It is an update from the version that you saw in the agenda, and that has incorporated the feedback from the councillors, and we really appreciate that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to move, but also I don't know if I need to adjust the recommendation, but if it be the mood of council, I'm happy to support Julie or whoever in submitting this in terms of having an elected member present, just in terms of adding weight to our relationship and partnership with Well Energy Trust.
So we're in questions at the moment, but I'll take that point and note you as the mover. The question I have then is because that draft is now moved from draft 1 to draft 2. Aha, thank you. You read my mind. So that picks up that loose end to make sure that we're talking about the right version. Any questions, councillors?
Could I treat Councillor Ryan's comment as a question?
Yes.
There's a lot of value in that, and in the past they have invited representatives of council to present to their submission, so I think that's a worthwhile aspect to consider.
Can I just add, part E of the motion talks about council representatives, and we would appreciate, if there were councillors acting as those representatives rather than staff.
Yeah.
So that might be a good
And
addition
that's
to the motion.
something we'll discuss amongst our membership afterwards, so thank you for that. We're now in debate, if there is any further debate. It's already been said. I'll just say thank you very much for your excellent work, Julie and team, and thank you to those councillors that picked up and did some really good nuancing of some pieces so that we've landed in something that we're all very happy with, obviously, for a lack of discussion. So we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, councillors. We're now into item 13, which is open recommendations from committees to the council. How I thought it might be useful to work this one is to allow the chairs of each relevant committee to speak to their own. I think that would work. So first of all, I'm happy to move the suite of... How does that work, Amy? Do I move the suite?
Could I suggest, look, that the chair speaks, we take each item separately, the chair speaks to it, then presumably the chair would move the recommendation from their committee.
Yeah, I was just trying to catch the catch-all one, but...
I think personally, well, it's
yeah, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
That's fine, we'll hold that then. So we're going to, first of all, look at the approval of the recommendation of the Finance Committee through Councillor Hamilton. Sorry, Councillor Pascoe. It isn't a demotion to go to economic development, is it?
I know.
It's actually a promotion. It's a promotion. It's a far cool committee. It's the cool committee.
So, Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation from the Finance Committee is in paragraph 6, and rather than read it out, the particular 3 recommendations were voted on at the Finance meeting and did meet the majority approval at that meeting. So I'm happy to seek that we reaffirm this at this meeting by moving those recommendations.
Seconder, please. Councillor Van Oosten. Wrong button. Any discussion? We'll go to any debate? We're in debate. No, we'll go to the vote. Thank you. That brings us to the number 2. I'm going down from the purpose statements. I'm going in that order. Pardon? Can we just call it out for the live stream? Okay. So I'm going to seek Council's approval of the recommendation of the CBD River Plan Advisory. Oh, you want to call that one out? Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. The motion from the Finance Committee is passed unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot that they can't see that. So we're going to number 2 to seek Council's approval of the recommendations from the CBD River Advisory, and it's in attachment 1 of the report. Councillor Taylor, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Southgate, yeah, look, I'm very happy to move 7A and B on page 53, and I can speak to it very briefly if it's appropriate. Or
yeah, yeah, I think because the terms of reference are quite a significant item, let's just have a quick.
Okay.
Where you're going with that?
I was very quickly going to cover the 7A, which was the suggested slight tweak in the name. Councillors who attended Ludo Campbell-Reid's talk to us late last year may recall that he suggested that it made sense not to have too narrow a context for the central city, and he suggested the term CBD actually did that, and we've had a good discussion about it in terms of addressing the fact that central city is not just a place for business, for work, but it's also a place to live, a place to play, a place to visit, a place to travel through. And we felt that this central city gives a slightly wider perspective than just CBD. And there's also boundary considerations. There is quite a strict boundary for the CBD, and some of the work in the central city may be slightly out of that boundary in places. So that was the reasoning behind the name change.
Okay, questions, Councillor McPherson?
Yes, look, I just want to know if there was any truth to the suggestion that the name change was to enable a brand new coffee table to be collected for the plan, given that the previous one had, I think, 36 CBD reports lined up on, and there was no more room.
I can respond to that and say no, there is no truth to that. This is basically an update of the CCTP, so there certainly won't be a brand new coffee table book, Dave, I can promise you that.
It's the same one that I've already got.
With a few tweaks.
And so, talking to that, Jeff, we had discussions about this isn't going to produce a new plan.
No.
It's going to pick up elements of all the existing plans and strategies and work streams that are relevant. So this isn't to produce anything standalone at the end of it, but to provide clarity about priorities. And I think that's quite clear in the terms of reference, I hope. Is that what you see?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher?
No, I'm just waiting for debate, and I'll happily second the chair's recommendation.
Okay, second.
Happy to second.
Okay, well, we are now in debate.
You introduce.
No,
Nothing to say?
Right.
Councillor Gallagher?
Yes. In terms of the coffee tables, there are lots of wonderful coffee tables in the CBD with wonderful cafes and very vibrant places, and albeit we have a slight glitch in terms of the current situation we're facing, but the success of the CBD and River Plan are obviously intertwined, and I'm very happy with the way this has been put together and structured. I think, particularly with regard to parts of the river, there is some low-hanging fruit in terms of potentially extending some of the pedestrian walkways along the river precinct, even if it's just a gravel track for now, that kind of thing. I think there are things that we can do, some bronze work just to get parts of our river precinct open up, some vegetation management, etc. In terms of the CBD component, I think the one-stop shop appeals to me, and I would be advising that if there are significant matters to do with the CBD or decisions to be made, then obviously having this particular overview committee working with various stakeholders like the Hamilton business, the CBD business people will be really, really good. So I think this is a really good way to go, and very clearly the reactions with, interactions with key partners, particularly Tainui, are going to be important. So I think this is a very good way to go and to tie the two up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bunting.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to give my colleague, Councillor Taylor, every piece of encouragement that I could, because at the moment, these guys need every piece of good news there is. I mean, we're steering down the group of in the next few months, a group of businesses who are going to be really feeling the strain. So knowing that we are preparing for the good times right now is absolutely vital. So I suggest we do it loudly, and we bring them in as much as we possibly can at the moment, but do everything I can to help.
Thank you. And look, I'll just make a few comments. I'm really excited about how this is going to progress and giving that focus back. And although we've dropped the name vibrancy from it, I know that that's still what it's about enabling our CBD to be as vibrant, profitable and lively as we possibly can. And sharing Mark's sentiments, thoughts are with all of those businesses in the CBD, because we do have a lot of small to medium businesses in the CBD and a lot of hospitality businesses. And the hospitality sector is already under great strain. So we need to support them in any way we can during this time, but we also need to provide a bedrock for future times when businesses will be able to get going again in full flight. So, so good luck, Deputy Mayor Taylor. It's an interesting and exciting piece of work. I'm absolutely adamant, of course, that this has been set up so that all decisions relating to CBD development come back to the council as a whole. So this is what it is. It is an advisory group that makes recommendations. So we will still have ownership over anything that changes in the way that we deal with the CBD, and I think that's pretty important, but this gives it a focus. I just note that there is a membership attached to this. Everyone is welcome to go. All councillors are welcome to go and have been warmly welcomed into a number of activities recently. We just need to be mindful, those members that are listed there, that they are able to attend on a regular basis, because we did face a situation of quorum issues with not people understanding that they need to be there if they put their name down. So if you're one of the named councillors and feel that you can't give the amount of time required, then we'll have to discuss that at some future time and replace you with someone who could, because it may cause the business to slow down. Fantastically exciting, though. Do I have to reply?
Yeah, look, apologies, I didn't speak initially. I wasn't anticipating much discussion on it, but given a couple of comments, which I appreciate, I thought I'd just say briefly that we're into work. Stakeholder consultation is beginning. In fact, I don't know if it's going to change at all with COVID-19, but on the 23rd and 24th of March, there's 2 days where staff and I and other members will be in town near the library there, and we'll be seeing various community groups on the first day and a whole lot of other groups on the second day. So consultation is getting underway. That's just the very start of it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll move to the vote, please.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. We now move to a resolution to exclude the public. I so move. Deputy Mayor Taylor seconds. All in favour? Those carried. Oh. Is there? Which one?
Infrastructure operations. Those other resolutions haven't been moved.
Oh, of course. There were a whole set of recommendations in this, isn't it? Sorry. I have to go back to the front page. Infrastructure operations. Apologies, guys. I thought we were going so well.
As acting chair,
yeah.
This is my moment. I will.
I hope you know that the chair is watching this. I
Yes.
hope you know.
Yeah.
She's just. Don't disappoint.
Thank you.
Don't disappoint.
On behalf, as the deputy chair, I'm not acting, but on behalf of the chair, I will so move. Right.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that? You can find the detail there. Back to discussion, sorry.
It's a question
Councillor
of the
McPherson.
general manager in charge of that area, who doesn't appear to be here, but Chris will do, he's just walked in. No, a serious question. It's not to do with coffee table books this time. There's been some confusion, it appears, over the situation of the current operator, Lime, and whether their extension of arrangement, or whatever it's called, out of its contract, is for 6 months or 12 months. So I was trying to hopefully find that out, to know that I'm voting. My understanding from the motion was that it was 12 months, but staff, at least some staff, appear to have a different understanding. So I'm seeking some clarification on them. Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but I'll pop out and try and find it.
Oh, I don't need it in terms of moving this, because it's not going to change the wording of the motion, but it's arising from that motion.
Okay, so you're happy to allow this to go through discussion to the vote, as long as you find out some course type?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. And far be it from me to be accused of one for detail or anything, but if you were just looking at this on its own, what would it mean? Because I looked at it and I thought, oh, heck, and it wasn't until Dave asked his question that I remembered what the heck we were talking about. So I wonder if we may amend the wording to be a little bit more descriptive of what exactly it's about.
Fees and charges for micro.
Yeah, that would cover it, if that's all right, just for, you know, for the public if they're looking at this. Because otherwise they're just general fees and charges. Minor alteration, but...
Okay, so you're saying that the council approves the following fees and charges for...
For the, what do you call the micro
Comes
mobility?
out of that committee.
Yeah. Yeah, and the,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
Do you understand that?
Chair to help us with this.
Yeah, I'm just taking a pause. We can lay voting of this one on the table till we get that quite right, but are you happy?
Look, I do need a seconder for my motion.
Personal hire devices,
I
would that do
assume
it?
Councillor Taylor seconded, but I'm more than happy for that to lie on the table until...
No, let's put in personal hire devices.
Okay, that's fine, yeah, and I'm sure, I'm hoping that's okay, Angela, all right? Yes, Councillor
Okay, so
O'Leary
there's
said that's fine, thank you.
no further questions, and we'll go into discussion if there is any. No? Okay, now we'll go to the vote on that. Well, there was no discussion, you didn't choose to, do you want to, do you want to?
No, not at all, not at all.
All right, well then we'll go to the vote. I would never stop you having your moment. Okay.
Maybe announce them.
Thank you. I have to go back and forward to see. Oh, reset. It's a bit interesting going backward and forward between the two sets. That's what confused me before, but never mind.
Councillor McPherson, can you please vote? And Mayor Paula.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we reset.
I'm waiting on everyone else. Okay.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us on to the number 4, which is the strategic risk and assurance, which is number 9 on the next page.
I'm happy to move, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe, seconder. Councillor Van Oosten, any questions? No. Any discussion? No. Go to the vote, please. Thank you. Go back to page.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Number 5 is the Economic Development Committee. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, because of the lowering interest rates, the Economic Development Committee moves to keep this.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, any discussion? Oh, have you got a seconder? Deputy Mayor Taylor, any discussion? Oh, I mean, any questions? Any discussion? No, go to the vote. Thank you. Oh. Have I done them all now? I have. I have actually done them all now. Sorry about that.
Councillor
Navigating
McPherson.
the pages on my iPad.
Councillor McPherson, sorry, can you vote? Thank you.
Right,
The
I will
motion is carried
return to the
unanimously.
resolution to move into public excluded, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor.
I have a question.
Before we go into public excluded? Okay.
Given that we have some members that are of this body that are watching this live, is there any ability for them to continue watching this live? Is that something that could be done through for future through a password arrangement situation? Because I think if we're continuing in-person meetings and some people can't come for obvious reasons, that's a good thing to plan.
Yeah, we're looking at all those.
No one will be here if Angela's not giving directions to Martin. They'll be here to keep him in line.
Look, you raise a good point, and all of that is in consideration at the moment as to how we enable councillors to continue their business in these times. So, yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
But at the moment, we've moved, seconded, we're moving into public excluded. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. That brings us to the public excluded.